So I'm going to give you a little overview of Matter security and in particular how we handle device identity. So first, a little intro to CSA and to Matter and the principles, the threat model, because that's fundamental. Different applications and different application domains often have different assumptions and different requirements. And then we'll cover a bit about the security and privacy architecture with a focus on device identity. And we'll talk a bit about future plans. All right. I'm going to try to get through this in maybe 15 minutes, leave some time for discussion afterwards. I will skip some slides, but I'll post the deck. Do you want it in our Google Drive, Michael? Is that the best place to put it?
I just made a subdirectory called Stories, so yes, please.
Okay, great. So the Connectivity Standards Alliance, it's an open standards body, industry consortium that's been around for more than 20 years, focused on simplifying IoT adoption through universal open standards. And you may be familiar with the original name, Zigbee Alliance. That was, well, 20 some years ago that the Alliance invented Zigbee based on 802.15.4 and a whole bunch of enhancements to Zigbee over the years. And then back in 2020, we announced, 2019 actually, late, that we were going to develop a new standard called Matter for smart home connectivity, and not based on Zigbee, but more interoperable and based on IP, whereas Zigbee was not based on IP. That really kickstarted the organization or put it into a fast expansion mode. We now have more than 30 board members and more than 700 companies involved, thousands of individuals who worked on creating the Matter standard. And we have several other working groups as well, which I won't talk about today. So what is Matter? Well, Matter is intended to provide a foundation for connected things. Although I will say the focus is really primarily on smart home, at least at this point. The principles of Matter are simplicity, interoperability, reliability, and security. Simplicity first, it needs to be easy to use, highly interoperable, very reliable, and highly secure as well. And so I was happy to see that. If you look at where it fits in a protocol stack, it's an application layer protocol. So it runs on top of TCP and UDP, on top of IPv6, currently supports AES 128 and equivalent asymmetric algorithms of equivalent strength. It's based on open source. There's an open source SDK. It can run across a variety of different network media, of course, since IPv6 runs across many different media, and provides, among other things, a common protocol for communicating with and among smart home devices, as well as supporting cloud connectivity, and in particular, a common data model, so that there's a common set of nouns and verbs and other things that are used to send commands to or receive updates in publish subscribe type mode for smart home devices. For example, if the device type is a light bulb, that might be on and off and perhaps dim or change color. Whereas for your refrigerator or your cooking oven, probably changing color is not something that it does, although maybe the light bulb inside of it. It's designed to run on low-end processors, MCU class compute, with less than a megabyte of flash. So the benefits, of course, for consumers, easier to use, more consistent. Instead of having to figure out whether the bulb you want to buy works with or will work with your favorite smartphone or ecosystem platform, it just works with all of them because Apple, Amazon, Google, Samsung, all of them work with Matter. That support's built into your smart speaker, your smartphone, your smart TV. Makes it easier for developers too. They don't have to develop different SKUs to work with the different ecosystems. And easier for retailers. They don't have to get all these returns. Oh, it didn't work with this, it didn't work with that. It's more compatible. This is the initial set of device types, but since that time we've added about a dozen other ones, including white goods. I mentioned the open source SDK. There's the link for it. You can download it. And we're up to version 1.4.2 now. We do usually 2 or more releases every year. So always adding more features and improving the reliability and security of the code. Speaking of security, we have a couple of fundamental security and privacy principles that we hold to. We take a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity, using layers of protection to provide defense in depth based on standard crypto algorithms. We do not believe that security and usability is a trade-off. You can have easy to use strong security, and that's what we aim for. So for example, no passwords, because passwords are not compatible with people. We recognize that it's not possible to make everything perfectly secure. Some things will become infected, and the system has to be resilient against that. And of course, crypto agile as we begin our move into post-quantum crypto. The threat model, we take a broad perspective on the threat model. The set of attackers is quite broad. So it's not just nation states, but also users or former users, guests in the home, as well as perhaps other trusted parties, such as a maintenance technician, an electrician, a maid, or perhaps a party guest, even somebody who snuck into your house, perhaps. But really, you have quite a broad spectrum there in terms of capability, motivations, that sort of thing. Could even be a former owner of the device if you bought something at a yard sale, for example. Or a new owner of a device if you sold something at a yard sale. Or maybe you left it on your curb or the trash can, in your trash can. It's not just devices that need to be secured, but also the network, gateways, and such. And all can be attacked. Humans are often the weakest link, but not always. So we try to protect against vulnerabilities in all of those devices, all of those attack methodologies, all those possible areas of vulnerability. In some cases, physical attacks may be in scope, in other cases not. Human engineering is certainly a concern. So we developed a threat model, comprehensive threat model of about 250 different threats, each categorized as to its severity based on our analysis of the likelihood of a particular threat and the impact of that threat. And then we identified about 300 possible countermeasures. Not all of them are implemented currently in the spec, but we have almost half of them implemented. And in many cases, there are multiple countermeasures against a given threat. So just to use an example here, we look at threat T59, a maliciously crafted message exploiting a device vulnerability leading to device compromise. We estimate that the likelihood of that is quite high. And of course, the impact could be quite high as well, depending on what device is compromised. So the overall severity based on those two factors is itself high. And therefore, it's a high priority for us to have protections against it. One of the countermeasures cited in the spec for T59 is mandatory OTA firmware update capability. All nodes in a Matter fabric have to support OTA firmware updates. All right, let's get into the device identity part. So within our architecture, identity is fundamental. Without identity, you don't have accountability. In fact, confidentiality without identity and authentication is sort of meaningless. Now I know for sure that I'm communicating securely with who knows who or what. And so we require every Matter device to come from a factory with a set of initial device credentials. And you see on the right-hand side what those device credentials are. There's a certificate chain, chaining from one of a handful of trusted routes to a device attestation certificate unique to this light bulb or other device. That DAC has within it a unique identity. Here it's bulb 32487, as well as a vendor ID and product ID. And of course, it corresponds to a private key you see on the right, which was pre-installed at the factory as well. In using this, the device is able to establish not only its identity, but also its authenticity. And the commissioner is able to verify that this is an authentic bulb and which vendor it comes from and which product model number it is within that vendor's product lines. It also, using the certification declaration, a signed binary blob or structured data structure, I should say, signed by the alliance, it's able to verify that this particular vendor ID and product ID was certified for Matter, and when and what version number and that sort of thing. And it also includes what's called a verifier, which is used as part of a password-based authenticated key exchange, or PAKE protocol, to enable secure provisioning of this bulb into the home. So on the next slide, you'll see how that works. The device is manufactured and the initial device credentials placed on that device in the factory. It ships into the store. Nothing magic happens in the store, but the consumer goes in there and buys it, assuming that this is a do-it-yourself application, like buying a light bulb. They bring it home. They scan the QR code unique to that device and included with that device with their smartphone. Just that's one of several ways of commissioning, but that's a simple one. And then that gives the smartphone half of the PAKE, which it then uses the short secret used in the password-based authenticated key exchange, uses to prove that, hey, I am actually an authenticated or trustworthy commissioner. I know your secret, and the device knows the other half. So between the two, they're able to establish a shared secret, which then is used as part of the commissioning process. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And from a user perspective, it's a simple matter of scanning the QR code, getting prompted, hey, we found your bulb. Looks like it's this kind of bulb. Is that what you wanted? Yes, okay. You bring it into the home, and now it's part of your network, and you can use it. So scan QR code, hit OK, and your bulb is on the network. But behind the scenes, what's happened is that the initial device credentials, here I'll go to this slide instead. Initial device credentials were verified. They were sent from the bulb to the commissioner, such as the smartphone. They were verified. There's a cryptographic exchange whereby the bulb had to prove possession of the private key. All of this took place over the secure session established using the PAKE based on the verifier and the corresponding secret included in the QR code. And so the commissioner was able to verify the identity of the bulb. And then and the bulb was able to verify that the commissioner knew its secret, so it was trustworthy as a commissioner. After that's done, a new identity, if you know 802.11ar, we could consider the initial device identity over here, the DAC to be the IDEV ID, and the new identity to be the LDEV ID, or local device identity, is installed on the device. And that again is a chain of certificates chaining to a trusted root, trusted within this home, and a corresponding private key that's installed on the device, and it contains within it a randomly generated node ID and a fabric ID shared within this home, so that the devices themselves can communicate securely using a TLS-like protocol, whereby they each one presents its own certificate, and they do a handshake and prove possession of the corresponding private key, verify each other's certs that they chain back up to the root CA used in the home. And then you've established identity. It's actually a role-based identity, although I'm not illustrating that here. There's a set of roles associated with the op cert, and then using the roles or the identities, an access control list can be consulted to make sure that to check whoever you've established secure communications with has the authority to do what they want to do. As you see, two sets of device identities. One, the IDEV ID, what we call the device attestation certificate, installed at the factory and used as part of the commissioning or process, as we call it, onboarding, some others call it. And then the LDEV ID, to use the 802.11ar parlance, what we call the operational certificate, used for communications within the home, and chaining back to a root cert trusted within the home. And this just illustrates some of the features that we have in Matter. I think we're basically at the end of the presentation. I was hoping we'd have 15 minutes for questions. Looks like we'll hit it, or discussion. We include this easy, secure, and flexible device commissioning feature. We have, as well as part of that, a validation that the device is authentic and certified using that device attestation cert. We check this device attestation cert against a global distributed ledger, which has the set of trusted root certs for the device attestation PKI. It also has pointers to CRL distribution points, so you can check revocation status of the DAC and the intermediate cert. And it has the latest info about certification declarations, as well as where to get OTA updates. We install the LDEV ID onto the device, our operational cert, as we call it, so only your devices can communicate within or join your smart home. And we support both secure unicast and secure multicast communications based on the operational cert. We have a unique feature, which we call multi-admin. I'm happy to get into that, but I'm afraid it may just confuse things. Suffice it to say that we permit you to use your device with multiple clouds simultaneously. In fact, every device has to support up to 5 cloud platforms, because it's quite common for perhaps one spouse to have an Android and the other one to have an iPhone, or maybe a smart speaker from a different vendor. So that was a necessity within the practical realities of the smart home. And as I said, we have fine-grained access control based on those access control lists to make sure that a bulb can't send a command to a switch, for example. We have the requirement, as I mentioned, for support for secure software updates, either using our standard mechanism or proprietary one. And we even support, although it's optional, remote attestation of firmware and software on the device. We got a lot of things coming down the pike. That CRL-based revocation is a new thing. I mentioned post-quantum, we're working on that. I won't get into all the things that we're working on, but we do spend a lot of time talking with security researchers. I think we have a wonderful opportunity for grad students, it seems, to review our open source software and tell us about every buffer overrun, or in some cases, a design flaw in the SDK or the spec, since it's all open source. And they can easily go down to a store or an online shop and buy a bulb and tear it down and find the vulnerabilities. So if you want more information, there's the URL. And that's the end of my presentation. We have some time for discussion. I will just say that I'm fully aware that many of the design choices that we took might not be the most appropriate ones for other environments. And for example, in industrial equipment or critical infrastructure or office equipment, network equipment, those have different expectations, different requirements, and they can make different assumptions, such as, for example, that you have an IT administrator within the environment, which is not true in most homes. My own being an exception, and yours as well. But we have to get to a level of ease of use and foolproofness that and reliability that exceeds what's commonly needed in the office or in critical infrastructure. We have no tech experts in the home quite often. Okay, let me throw it open for questions and discussion.
Do you run the registry for your device certificates, or is that sort of left up to manufacturers?
So we run the, although of course it's a distributed ledger, we run the distributed compliance ledger that is used, and I'll just back up a couple slides to, here it is, well, it says up-to-date info via distributed compliance ledger. So that is a registry of the root CAs. That's how the root CA list is distributed. Also, the CRL distribution points, although we enable the manufacturers to choose whatever CRL DP they want, they have to post that CRL DP up in the DCL in the registry.
But you
Does that explain it?
do you have a central authority that decides whether or not a root CA is allowed into the distributed compliance ledger?
Yes, we do. It
Okay.
is actually, I say it's not actually a central authority. The nature of a distributed ledger is there are multiple trustees, and those trustees decide whether a new root CA should be permitted. We typically only permit new root CAs from our members to be added to the DCL.
Okay. So do you support onboarding with no internet connection?
We do.
Okay, so it is possible. Okay.
In that case, you're not going to get the very latest information about, for example, revocation. You'll just get whatever happens to be cached on your smartphone regarding revocation or regarding the set of root CAs. But yeah, the cabin in the woods was a necessary use case as part of our design.
Okay, cool. Now how do you handle intermediate and root CA expiries that may actually expire faster than the certificates themselves on the devices?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Basically, what we do is we say that when you're checking the revocation status or validity of a device's device attestation cert, you use the issuance date of the device attestation cert, not the current time. Because as you say, the root CA might have a lifetime of 2 years, or perhaps 5 for the root and 2 for the intermediate CA. The trend is towards shorter and shorter lifetimes there. And yet we don't want to require that a new cert be installed on the device every 2 years or 6 months or whatever crazy lifetime they've decided to place on their intermediate cert.
So, Steve, so that means that a factory could create a new subordinate CA every morning, sign all the device identities for the day, having been signed by the offline trust anchor, of course, and then destroy that subordinate CA at the end of the day, and that would be fine.
Yep. Yes, that would.
So, okay, so you're basically ignoring the expiration dates on the CA and intermediate CAs. Is that effectively
right.
what you're doing? Or yeah,
That's
okay.
right.
But
Okay.
I think Randy, it's a little subtler than that, because if they did what I just said and they had a subordinate CA that was valid for whatever 36 hours or something of the production factory, then you know that next week's subordinate CA can't sign this week's production.
And
Yeah.
and
so
you know that you've destroyed that private key. It would be a way for a manufacturer to limit the scope of compromise of a single private key. And if you end up needing to revoke a intermediate CA, at least you've only revoked a week's worth of production.
Right. Yeah. Or whatever the period. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually provides some interesting way to manage some of the risks that are involved by having very short lifetime intermediate CAs. It's yeah, it's the expiry dates are always the biggest headache, and I've always been an advocate of just ignoring them. But that's okay. So that's cool. Now
Can these new devices then with different CAs trust each other on the network, or trust the registration facility on the network?
So let me.
I guess it's kind of popping into them. They don't have a basis on which to do that since they're using a different base certificate, right?
Let's be clear here. There are two sets of credentials. There's your, I'm going to use your probably the 8021 AR parlance. There's your IDEV ID on the left, and there's your LDEV ID on the right. The IDEV ID is only ever used at commissioning time. It's presented to the commissioner, like your smartphone, and it's verified at that time to determine whether the bulb is trustworthy to come into the home. The right-hand side shows the LDEV ID. That's installed at commissioning time, and it can be updated later. And that is what is used by the devices within the home to communicate with each other. So they all share a common root. All of the devices within the home share a common root for their IDEV, their LDEV IDs, their operational certs. So we don't have a situation, which I think Jeff was hypothesizing or postulating, that two devices within the home do not have a common root. They do, they all do. At least for their operational cert, the one that they would use to communicate with each other.
A comment, Steve, two questions, but one comment is I would change the issue, where I realize you're invoking Acme as in Wile E. Coyote's Acme. But alas, we now have a Acme protocol. And so I saw that and said, oh, let's encrypt. No, that's not what he meant. Okay. So maybe it should just say Steve Hanna's home, or, whatever. Wile E. Coyote's home, it doesn't matter, is the subject at the top. But my question was actually, how do I get, if I'm a guest in your home, how do I get this root cert for my phone to trust what's there?
So guest access is handled differently by different ecosystems. What tends to happen is the ecosystem has its own way of supporting guests within the home. And sometimes it's your tapping phones together. How that happens is up to the particular ecosystem. So, you know, Android and Apple, they'll have their own methods for supporting guests. And we don't get into user account management as part of the standard. We focus on the devices and how they communicate with each other.
So basically, if I'm in your home, off the bat, I don't have access to any of your devices, and I could work out something with you maybe in a specific way to allow my phone to do that, if you will, if you cooperate with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it might be that there's a smart speaker, and perhaps that smart speaker has been configured in such a way that anybody can walk up to it and say, turn on the bathroom light or whatever. But from your phone, you'll have no access. Simply being on my Wi-Fi network doesn't give you any access. You have to work it out with me. I'm the admin for my home, and however I, you know, do that within my home.
So I may have confused the situation by saying guest, but I want to come back to that question actually. So let's just say, you know, my 14-year-old got a new phone. So how do they get the cert? And I'm gonna it's the same. It's ecosystem specific still, or is there some other? I don't know. They were different and bought a different brand phone than the rest of the family, right? Rebellious teenager.
Let's take the two cases. First, assume that it's the same ecosystem. That is, they bought the same brand of phone. Then again, I say it's up to the ecosystem, how they handle it, and the consumers, how they chose to handle it. So most of those ecosystems would have some concept of a family and which users are part of the family, and, you know, some way to say what those users are allowed to do, and you'd probably give something less than admin access to your teenager. So that's one case. There's another case, though, which is that this teenager bought a different brand of phone, and the brand of phone they bought doesn't integrate with the ecosystem that I use. So, you know, let's say I have, we're all Apple, and then the kid goes out and sacrilegiously buys an Android. We have that multi-admin feature whereby the consumer who has the Apple phones and uses Apple Home can basically trigger that feature. Then their phone will display a QR code that can be scanned by the Android phone, and then that will empower the Android phone to take control of, that is, to become a second cloud attached to and commissioned to and controlling one or more devices within the home. So they could say, hey, you know, give my kid access to and admin privilege on these on the light bulbs in their room, or all the light bulbs in the home, or all of the devices within the home. And at that point,
the refrigerator.
Yeah, maybe the refrigerator is most important. At that point, that child would have that level of control because their favorite cloud would have commissioned all those devices into that cloud, and the child would have set up their own account with that cloud vendor. Often, I keep saying cloud, often these systems support a disconnected mode of operation whereby you have, say, a smart screen or hub from that manufacturer that can be used to control devices even if you lose your internet connectivity. But that's up to that cloud operator how they want to do it. We do, by the way, also support cases where the homeowner supplies their own Raspberry Pi based system, such as Home Assistant, and operates their own within the home private cloud. That's supported also. I see we're out of time, but I have nothing in my next slot. If you want, I'll stay on the call. We can keep talking.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's a lot of overlap between the way we see the problem in industrial automation and the way that you are solving it here. In fact, a lot of the assumptions you're making are almost identical to what we do, just different terminologies.
Randy, I would say there's a lot more that I haven't said, which is even more in common with IEC 62443. I'm an ISA member, ISA 99 member, and former working group chair there. And I took a lot of inspiration from some of the things that are done in 62443, and we're planning to do some more of them in the future. So yes, we have a lot in common, some things different. I'd love to talk more about it if you'd like.
Yeah, again, we can identify that in future meetings, but anyways, I have to drop. So it was very interesting presentation. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Steve, I had one question, and sorry,
Sure.
I think you may have covered it. Are all products certified to meet the standard?
Yes.
And in your
they have
sorry,
to
go
be.
on.
They have to
That's
be, yeah.
mandatory because then they go on the database saying approved products, etc.
Yes.
So in the event that you talked about firmware over the air update, so if you do a software update, I assume when they're certified, it's the software, the application software plus Matter is all installed on the device. So if it's a light bulb, you've got all the light bulb control software and you've got the Matter software, and you certify it as a thing, a complete thing. Is that correct?
That's correct, but there's a new wrinkle. Just a few weeks ago, we introduced something called Matter Platform Certification. And basically the way that works is that your silicon vendor can get their silicon, their chip, certified with respect to Matter. And that means that if they do that, they have a pre-built version of the SDK that runs on their platform, their silicon, and when you use that pre-built library along with their silicon, you as the device maker only have to do the parts of the certification test that apply to your application code. 2/3 of the tests are just fundamental Matter tests. Can it talk? Can it commission? That sort of thing. And those you don't have to do over again because they were already done by your platform vendor.
So how do you, if I do a software update, you know, I ship the bulb, 6 months down the road, I need to do a software update because, you know, I want to add more colors to the bulb. How do I know that I haven't messed with the Matter code inadvertently? Obviously, not intentionally, but in some way broken the conformance?
You have to, if you touch the Matter code or Matter related functionality, you have to recertify that firmware version. Now, we do have a methodology whereby trusted vendors, ones who've been trained in how to do their own self-certification, can do that self-certification and avoid the need to, you know, send it off to a lab. So that's an option for those who are trained in how to do that. But yeah, you basically, if you touch the Matter code or your code that runs on top of Matter, you have to recertify.
I was thinking it's, you know, in a microcontroller, it's obviously very tightly coupled. It might be running on a real-time operating system. So could be a risk that I change the thing that does the color code on the light bulb and that inadvertently impacts something on Matter. That was the bit I was getting at. How do you know I didn't inadvertently break something else in it? Because in the end, you know, you're not running it on a big x86 box.
Well, Richard, we're dealing with software here and it's always full of bugs. There's a defect density concept that I'm sure you're familiar with. And if we look at the defect density of IoT devices, it's quite high on a, you know, per function point basis. So long story short, the devices, as with every device, are full of bugs. And those bugs do crop up from time to time. No matter how much we test, we can't get the defect density down to 0. Some of those are remotely exploitable vulnerabilities, by the way. Some of them are 0 days that aren't even known to the manufacturer. If they knew about them, they would fix them. So it is a fact of life, and a fact of software that it's going to happen sometimes. And we have to make a trade-off in terms of practicality. You know, we're not going to make you recertify just because you changed some, you know, some feature that didn't have anything to do with Matter.
That was the bit I was getting at. You don't recertify
No.
if you change some other code on the microcontroller. That's the, you know, the summary of it. Got it. Thanks.
Sure.
Steve, I'm going to thank you, but I have one last question. Does the commissioning and local device piece, does it have any support for, I'm going to say, Airbnbs or hotels, that kind of non-concurrent multi-tenant?
Right. So at the moment, the answer is that depends on your ecosystem.
Okay.
Your ecosystem can do that or not do that. We do have some teams working on providing a standard way to do some of those things, and you know, not just for hotels and Airbnbs, but in a landlord-tenant relationship with a multi-unit apartment building, or in a commercial space. Again, landlord-tenant, but often then there's a landlord, and then there's a property manager, and then there's, within the tenant, there may be multiple levels of capability. You know, you have your facilities manager, your maintenance guy, your, you know, average office user who wants to turn on the bulb, you know, in their office. Then there's a whole question of installers, you know, an electrician who comes in and does the install, and you don't want them to be able to monitor you in your bathroom later on. And then resale. So there's a lot to it.
Okay.